is now recording. All right. So, part of the idea of keeping up with the curriculum is that last week was 1E, 1G. Yeah. Sorry, if it's right. Part of your ability to keep up with the curriculum is so that 1E, you needed to know how to add, subtract negative numbers. And then I also taught you how to multiply and divide negative numbers. And so today we're going back to exercise 1F. And remember last week I said, once I teach you 1G, which most of you picked up really well, multiply and divide negative numbers, then when I start teaching 1F, a lot of students then mix the two. Okay, so I'm hoping today to demystify that issue. Number line is the best thing when it comes to add, subtract. Okay, later on you don't need it. I know it's tedious, but you should do it if you're getting them wrong. So if you're not checking your answers, then you might do them wrong. And so when we do a test, you might find that your results are different. So as you're doing the work, please check your answers. But here we go. Let's start off with the first one. I'm going to show you again about that double positive equals positive, double negatives, and what happens with addition, subtraction, and how similar it is to 1G, multiplication and division. Okay, let's have a look here. So I've got a number line ready for you. The sign in front of a number, positive or a negative, tells us, and I want you to write this down, the direction. It might help to think of the negative, if it helps you as I'm describing this, as saying the opposite or the reverse. Oh yeah, true. That's true. Thank you. Here we go. I froze the screen so I could mark the roll before. So direction, opposite, or reverse. So I've got the same numbers here, but what I'm going to change in each one is the plus and minus and what it actually means on the number line. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out so we can see the number line. What I taught you in exercise 1E was to look at where we're starting and then which direction we go, right? So same thing here. That's a positive 2. That right here says positive 2. So on the number line, I am sitting over here. Positive 2 is right there. So that's my positioning. Then we say plus, right? Now, which direction am I going when I say plus? Is it to the right or is it to the left, Fitzroy? It's to the right. So I know I'm meant to go to the right. Now, this is where, depending on the sign, plussing a positive means that what if I had a positive 2? Okay, so here means the direction, I'm still going in the same direction. This means same direction, 2 units, not opposite. If it was a negative sign, then it would say go in that way, but the opposite direction. But that doesn't say negative. So this is going to the right, same direction. So I'm still going to the 2 units to the right. So that's why 2 plus a positive 2 means I'm going 1, 2, and my final answer should be positive 4. Very good. So what I'm trying to say here is when you add a positive number, it's actually just the same as saying plus, because overall you're still moving to the right. Yeah, so plus was to the right, and that positive sign there in front of the 2 means that continue the same direction. If it was a negative, it would mean go the opposite direction. Okay, so that's why you will then start to see this pattern that when you add I'll use a different color. When you add a positive, so plus a positive, the resulting sign or operation is still plus. So you're still adding, which means you move to the right. Okay? Let's do it now when you're adding on a negative. So in this exercise, they'll start putting in extra signs and you might get confused here, but same idea again. Let's start here. If I had 2, again, that tells me position, tells me where I'm on the number line, and here's my number line. I'm at 2. I put a dot. That's where I'm at. They say plus. Now, Fitzroy said before that we're moving to the right, so I'm meant to go this direction by 2 units, but notice there's a negative now. So this is plus, but then I'm adding on a negative. Now remember the negative, I said it might help you to remember it as the reverse or opposite direction. So in this case, instead of going right, it's saying do the opposite, but 2 units. So opposite direction by 2 units. Now, instead of going to the right, which direction am I going then? Left. So this case now, instead of going to the right, the opposite direction means I'm now moving 2 to the left, and that brings me 2 backwards, and that brings me down to 2. You see that? So the answer here would be 2, but then what does that mean? If I'm going to the left, is that a minus or a plus? If you're going left, what operation should that be? Minus. So I want to zoom in for you to see here. When you say add a positive, it's actually still moving to the right. So we say, let's keep it as a positive sign. Here, if you're adding a negative number, it actually ends up being the same as you saying go to the left, which means 2 minus 2, because we're saying you're going to the left. This one you're saying going to the right. So why this gets confusing for some students, because it's very similar to 1G, plus a negative is still the same idea that if you have a plus a negative number, the overall direction is still minus, which is the left direction. So this is still the same as minus, and you're moving left. Okay, now I know it feels confusing. Once we start doing some exercises, you'll start to see what I mean. Okay, you just need to know which direction we're going first. The double negatives is where it gets confusing. Let's do the next one. This one, what if I said 2 minus this time? So again, let's draw it on a number line. 2, where's 2? 2 is right up here, and I'm going to start at 2. Here's 2. Now it says minus. Which direction am I going? Where should I be going if it says minus? I'm meant to go left. Okay, now, before you take the action and go left, you got to see what sign this 2 is. If this sign is positive, that just means continue the same direction. So here, if we read it, this means continue going left, okay? But this one says same direction, not opposite. You're not going the opposite direction. So that means overall, you still go left. If you still go left, this should be subtract, because left is subtraction, right is plussing or adding. So here, 2 minus 2, we know is still 0. Okay, so if I go back to the sign, we're meant to go left, and a positive just means continue the same direction. So hence, 1, 2, I'm back to 0. So when you write here, if you subtract a positive number, it actually is still the same as writing minus, which gives you left. And then finally, hopefully you pick up the pattern here. If I gave you this question, 2 minus a negative 2, okay, you got to read what it's telling you overall. So they say you're starting off at 2. So here you are. Which direction am I going if it's minus? Left. So I'm meant to go left, but you have to read the sign. That means opposite. See, negative and minus are different things. One's an operation, one's a direction. Okay, that's why on your calculators it's actually different. On your green calculators, which I've got one here to show you, you'll see on the calculators they have 2 different symbols. One actually shows you a negative, and then one actually shows you minus. So on your calculators, if you have one of these, the bottom on this one, that means negative. So that's telling you the direction. Whereas minus is an operation. You're actually subtracting things. Okay, the negative isn't subtracting, the negative is a direction. But because we know that if you subtract a negative value, the overall direction is going to be, and I'm going to get you to write this down, this is meant to move left, but the opposite of left is right. So instead of left, you're meant to now move to the right. And if we're going to the right, that's the same thing as saying plus. Okay, so one's a direction, one's an operation. So 2 plus 2, well, we know then that gives you 4. So it's very similar to the chart you learned. If you got minusing a negative value, it's the same thing as you adding, which moves to the right. So let's zoom out and let's see the chart that you've learned from last week. This is what you had. Double positive is positive. A plus a negative is negative. Minusing a positive is negative. And then minusing a negative is positive. It's very similar to what you did with multiplication. The problem is that this one's talking about direction. It's actually moving on the number line. So where's the confusion? If I gave students, after you learnt 1G, and then I gave them a test, this is what I give them, and this is where the mistake comes in. If I give students this, -3 take away -4, as an example, students look at this and they get confused. They look back and they think, well, what did I do in 1G? 1G says negative, negative. Double negative should be positive. So they think, all right, 3 take away 4 should be plus, and then 3 take away 4 is 1, so they write +1. Okay, it was actually, that turns out to be actually the correct answer, as I just made it up. But usually they make the signs because they're sticking to 1G. 1G and 1F are very different. Okay, so what I want you to write down here, there is a difference between minus and a negative. Minus is the operation. It's what you're actually doing. You add, subtract, multiply, divide, right? Negative is not. Negative is just a direction. So here, this is a direction. So often, when you're simplifying the problem, so we're going to do some examples to help you understand now. Your aim is to figure out which operation you're doing. The direction just confuses you, and then you use the operation, simplify the operation to help you add or subtract. Okay? So you guys were good at exercise 1E. When you said it was easy, that's fantastic. Because when you get these kind of questions, exercise 1F, it's about you simplifying the problem. So here, 10 plus a -3. Don't confuse it with exercise 1G. It's not positive, negative is overall negative. It's not like that. It's plus 10. That's your position. So on the number line, you're at positive 10. So let's say 10's over here. Now let's think about the direction. Plus, which direction am I meant to go? To the right. But then there's a negative. What's the negative mean? Left. It means do the opposite of that. So instead of going to the right, I'm now going to the left because this means opposite by 3. So 10, if I go opposite by 3, where should I end up? 7. So this is actually the same thing as saying 10 take away 3, which is why you have the answer as 7. Okay, now that middle step there, I want to see in every one of your steps. It's a question method answer, but it tells me if you understand plusing a negative is the same thing as saying subtracting. Okay, because that negative is a direction. It just tells you where to go. All right, let's do another one. That one there. If I said -3 plus -5, let's think about it. Here's a number line. Here's 0. -3 is over here. So starting at this point, again, you got plus. Which direction should I be going? Right. To the right. But this is a negative. So negative means opposite. So I actually go to the left. So if I'm going left now, and I'm going left by 5 units, where would that bring us to? -3 minus 5 gives you -8. Now, if you want to think about it logically, why is it like this? Why is the negative a direction? You see, the reality is that negatives usually means opposite. So, for example, if you had positive $10, that's $10 in your pocket. If you have negative $10, what does that mean? That means you owe money. Doesn't mean you don't have money. It means you borrowed money and you owe $10. That's the opposite of having. So imagine Monday you borrowed $3 from me, so you owe me $3. That's -3. Then on Tuesday, Tuesday you borrowed another 5. That means in total, how much do you owe me then? -8, which makes sense because if you owe me $3 on Monday and then $5 on Tuesday, well, together it should be total $8 that you owe me. That's what this represents. -3 is how much you owe me, and you owe me another $5. So of course, in total, you owe me $8. Get me there? The confusion that a lot of students do is that if you use 1G, double negatives is positive, and then they think it's 3 plus 5 is positive 8. Doesn't make sense. You owe me $3 and you borrow another $5 and now you have $8 in your pocket. Yeah, so you owe me 8. You don't have $8 in your pocket, you owe me 8. That's why the direction matters. And that's how we use it in accounting. If you get into accounting, the negatives do matter. Okay? Let's try the next one. Same idea. Next one is 4. So again, draw the number line if it helps you to visualize. So I'm going to draw a number line. 4 is over here. So here's my spot. Again, let's have a look. Minus, which direction am I going? I'm meant to go left, and then you check the sign. Negative means opposite. So instead of going left, I'm going to the right. So here, now I'm saying go to the right by 2 units. Now, if I'm at 4 and I go to the right by 2, what's the answer? 6. Very good. 4, this is the same thing as saying, so minusing a negative is the same thing as saying plus 2 because I'm going to the right. So hence, this gives you 6. So that middle line is key. You need to understand that minusing a negative is the same operation as plussing. So 4 plus 2 means you're going to the right. That's how you get a positive 6. Last one. Minus 11 minus 6. Okay, so again, let's draw the number line. Here's a number line. 0 is here. Negative 11 somewhere over here. Here's my spot. Read the sign again. This is minus. Which direction am I going? Left. Now that's 6. What's the sign in front of 6? Supposedly. It's meant to be positive. We just can't be bothered writing it. So I did it before for you here. So sometimes they'll put a bracket. But that's your typical one. That actually just means minus a positive 6. Okay, so right here, positive just means keep going the same direction. So I'm still going left by 6 units. Now, if I'm starting at negative 11 and I'm going further left an extra 6 units, where should I end up? Very good. So it's negative 11. Minus is still minus because I know minus a positive is the same thing as minusing. Minus 6, that gives you negative 17. That number line helps you. Over time, you don't need it. But if you're getting the answers wrong, then I want you to draw the number line to help you. Eventually, you can picture it in your mind and you don't have to draw the number line to get it right. But that's the difference between 1F and 1G. 1G is easier because you just times them and then figure out the signs. Here, you have to actually think about the number line, which direction you're truly moving. Okay? Let's see. Oh, turn over to the next page. This is problem solving now. So let's see if you can problem solve now. So these ones could be a bit trickier. You now have to think about the signs more carefully. Here we go. This is question 5 of exercise 1F. So I'm helping you do question 5 here. Yes. So let's have a look. Question 5A. You got 4 plus something, and the result has to be 1. So using a number line. Here we go. Here's my number line. 4 is somewhere over here, so I'm starting at this point. Now add. Think about it. If I say add, which direction am I going? Add means which direction? Right. To the right. So I'm meant to go right. But if you look at where 1 is over here. 1 is over here. Plus means to go to the right. But I need to end up at 1, which is on the left. So how do I change? How do I change that? Sorry, boys, you're going to need these two. Come up here and grab one, please. So problem solving, you're starting off at 4. There's 2 sheets here. Just come and grab. You're starting off at 4. Adding means go to the right. But I want to go to the left. So what sign should this new number be? What should the sign be? Have a think. This is where problem solving is. So you're starting off at 4. Plus means right. But clearly, if you want to end up at 1, you have to go to the left. So what should the sign be for this number that you're adding on? Negative. So I know the answer has to be a negative answer already. And how many units? From 4 to 1, how many units do you need? 3. So it should be 4 plus a negative 3 is the same thing as saying 4 take away 3 gives you 1. See how we're moving backwards? So this one's a bit more confusing. Question 5 is a bit trickier, but you have to master fluency before you get to question 5. Okay, so let's do another one. Same idea. 6. Draw a number line. Here's a number line. Starting 6 is over here. Now plus. Plus is going to the right. So I'm meant to go this direction. But 0 is where I end up. I'm meant to end up here. So I need to actually move to the left. Now the only way to move left, just like what Hamza said before, needs to be a negative. But how many units do you need to go from 6 back to 0? 6. So this clearly has to be plus a negative 6. So that if you write the intermediate step, plus a negative is the same thing as minusing. 6 minus 6 gives you 0. Are we feeling it? Yeah? So the number line helps you to visualize. Now the last two could be tricky. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to give you a minute to have a go with these two, and I want you to fill it out, okay? Let's see if you get the right answer. This is tricky because there's more negatives there. Here we go. I'm going to pause the video. All right, it's continuing recording. So from here, listening, eyes and ears towards the board. Thanks, team. Just one last explanation. So J and K, what makes it tricky is that double negative. I'm trying to figure out where your origin is. You know that minusing a negative, minus is left, but opposite of left is right. So you know you have to go right by 7 units. That's why I wrote plus 7. You need to go right by 7 from somewhere to get to 2. So 2 is over here, but that means if I had to go right by 7 units, you have to figure out, well, from 2, I had to go backwards to get to where this number should be, because that's my final destination. If I had to go right by 7, then to go back, you just go left by 7. Now 2, if you go left by 7, what number should it end up at? Left by 7. What does that give you? Negative 5. So this is where the logic comes in, and this is a bit trickier for some of you. The idea is it had to be negative 5 minus a negative must be the same as plus, so that's why you move to the right. So negative 5 plussing to the right by 7 to get to 2. So this one's trickier. Your next one is the same idea. Your aim is to get to negative 4. Minus is left. That means opposite of left. So opposite of left is right. So that's why I wrote a plus here. So you're moving to the right by 2 to get to negative 4. So I was somewhere and I had to move to the right by 2 to get to negative 4. So what number should this be? Go backwards. Negative 4 left by 2 gives you? Negative 6, because the further you go that direction, the number gets larger, but it's a negative direction. So it should be negative 5 and then negative 6. Very good. So this is what makes this question tricky, or at least this exercise tricky. So it's very similar to 1E. Don't confuse it with 1G. 1F is the skill that I want to see. Okay, so in your readiness task, I was checking this as well. So I wanted to see how your negative numbers and how you're moving with negative values are. Okay, so that's chapter 1. Chapter 1's mainly working with negatives. Next session is going to be orders of operation, which is BODMAS. You can't do BODMAS well if this is not down. Okay, so you need 1E, 1G, 1F to make sure that you can move and do BODMAS. Okay, so most of you have already submitted 1E. I'm looking for 1G. 1G is by the end of this week, and also 1F is by the end of this week. Okay? All right, I'm going to stop the video.